When Andrew McCarthy was a teen acting student at New York University, one of his teachers told him, "If you keep smiling like that, you're going to charm us all, and it will be your downfall." This was at the dawn of the 1980s, a decade that McCarthy stamped with his genial screen image in movies such as St. Elmo's Fire, Pretty in Pink, Less Than Zero, and Weekend at Bernie's. He was often cast as the sensitive heartthrob next to some cooler, bigger-haired guy played by Rob Lowe, James Spader, or Robert Downey Jr. In St. Elmo's Fire, 1985, about a circle of 20-something friends, he was a jaded newspaper reporter who pined for Ally Sheedy. In Pretty in Pink, 1986, written and co-produced by John Hughes, he was a rich kid who was pined for by Molly Ringwald. Both were part of a wave of ensemble films about the longings of young adults, which introduced a generation of actors who came to be called the Brat Pack, a term that has become synonymous with 80s nostalgia. But it didn't start out that way. The phrase was coined in a damning New York cover article, which followed McCarthy's male co-stars from St. Elmo's Fire on a night out in Los Angeles and portrayed them as entitled fame seekers. McCarthy spent years trying to distance himself from the Brat Pack, even after his leading man days were over. He continued to act, while finding second and third careers as a travel writer and a television director, with credits including Orange is the New Black. He has written 2 books, but it took him until his third to revisit the decade that defined him, and that he helped to define. In Brat, an 80s story, which comes out this week, he recalls his entry into acting and his rapid rise, the alcohol problem that nearly derailed his life, and coming to terms with the Brat Pack label. When we spoke, by Zoom, he was at his home in upstate New York, where he spent much of the pandemic. He's also been directing episodes of the Awkwafina sitcom, Nora from Queens, and the crime drama, The Blacklist, starring his Pretty in Pink castmate James Spader. Our conversation has been edited and condensed for clarity. You wrote a travel memoir and a young adult novel before writing your Brat Pack book. Were you putting it off? People have asked me over the years, do you want to write a Brat Pack book? My answer was always a very quick no. Then, a few years ago, the Simon Schuster publisher, Jonathan Karp, contacted me, and I went, huh. I started writing it on my own, without telling him, to see if I had anything to say. The first book that I wrote was a travel book, but it was really about coming to terms with getting married. Wanting to be alone and wanting to be intimate with somebody, and how do we reconcile those things? I learned a lot about my own habits of avoidance in that. I'd actively avoided the Brat Pack for a long time, and I wanted to see what I would learn from it.